The latest episode of Rick and Morty, titled Unmortricken, was merely supposed to be the 5th episode of the 7th season of the series, but it turned out to be so much more. In an unexpected turn of events, Rick, Cardonis, finally tracks down the variant of himself who took the lives of his original wife and daughter, bringing his series-long search for the villain to an end. But the encounter's outcome turned out to be the most violent sequence the series has portrayed yet, and that's saying something, considering the amount of graphic brutality the show has portrayed in the past. After Rick and Morty had been on the air for a couple of seasons already, Adult Swim decided to surprise everyone with the premiere of Season 3. Not only was the entire episode uploaded as an April's Fool prank from the network, but it also contained vital information about Rick's backstory. Through a series of flashbacks explored in a machine where Rick was kept unconscious by the Galactic Federation, it was revealed that Rick's original wife and daughter were killed by a variant of himself after he refused to become one of the selfish scientists roaming around the galaxy. Known as Rick Prime, the variant gloated about supposedly being the rickiest Rick in the multiverse, with everyone else being inferior to his genius and careless lifestyle. Since the Rick the audience has been following for almost a decade at this point refused to live a life dedicated to anything else than his family, Rick Prime decided to take that away from him, with hopes of unleashing his true potential. These would be the events that turned Rick C-137 into an alcoholic who refused to share his feelings with his loved ones, setting in motion a cycle of violence that would last for years. After years of wandering around the galaxy without a true purpose, Rick decided to finally go after Rick Prime at the conclusion of Season 6. Thanks to Morty and his variant known as Evil Morty, the egocentric scientist finally found his nemesis, and the battle between the two was epic until the point where Evil Morty left Rick Prime tied to a chair. Accepting the gift that was placed right in front of him, Rick punched Rick Prime to death, in what turned out to be the most violent sequence in the history of the show. Rick Prime's death is Rick and Morty's most violent sequence for a big reason. Rick and Morty, Season 7, Episode 5, Rick Prime, Death Image via Adult Swim. While Rick and Morty hasn't been shy about the amount of violence it utilizes for the sake of a joke or whenever Rick is angry at the people he's fighting, the death of Rick Prime was different from anything the show has portrayed before. There was no music to provide the tone for the sequence, with the only sounds heard being Rick's fist striking Rick's Prime face, and the villain's blood crashing against the walls. C-137 didn't even say anything while he was getting the job done, as his enemy made fun of him for trying to build a life with his family. The point of the violent murder isn't to make the audience laugh or to show how meaningless things can be in the vast multiverse of Rick and Morty. It's one of the two lead characters of the animated series trying to go through a catharsis after 7 seasons of feeling like he was completely alone. He's never getting Diane Carey Walgren back, but he can make sure the person who took her away from him is eliminated. Even if that's not what his wife would have wanted for his life, Rick doesn't care, as he understands that he's been consumed by vengeance. There is no time left purposely empty for viewers to laugh, and there's no quick line delivery from Rick, either. It's just one dry punch after the other until C-137 emerges from the room drenched in his enemy's blood. When you take into account that the two are variants of one another, the scene takes a whole different meaning, with Rick covered in what might very well be his own blood. This scene was brutal because it wasn't about the violence, but about the emotions it carried while Rick ended the life of the person who, in a way, ended his years before the events of the series took place.